All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's January 19th, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going over to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse and subscribe. Also, don't forget to share these videos with your team. It's a great way to keep everyone on the same page, even if you can't join these meetings because of an inconvenient time slot or conflict. So with that said, got a number of announcements here that came across my radar this week. One that I was pretty excited about was that GitHub plans to actually support Mermaid JS in Markdown files on GitHub. This is slated for Q1 2022, so that's a good thing. It's going to be GA, so not just an enterprise feature. And for those of you not familiar with Mermaid, you can very easily depict graphs with just text markdown that renders cleanly like this as SVGs in the browser. And it supports much more complicated displays as well, such as general flow charts and stuff. So. The other announcement, I don't think this one was new. It came across my dashboard. Oh no, this was the wrong link for, what did I click on? I clicked on the wrong one. So yeah, no, this one was cool. I thought this is different. So if your organization has on-call engineers, I think a nice little perk and a good gesture to the other people who are affected by on-call, family members, kids, etc., having a policy at your company that whoever's on call, if there's an incident, we got you covered. We're paying for your dinner for you and the family. It's an expense. And I thought that's a really nice gesture and something that I came across my Twitter feed here. Anyone already doing something like this?
We're doing the emergency part, but not the dinner part.
Emergency part? Yeah. Yeah. That's you have the emergencies, but you don't get the dinner, you mean?
Exactly.
That's funny. Sorry. I was a little slow there.
It's a good one.
Yeah, bring that up at your next review. Another one. Yeah, so Proton is Amazon's kind of like ServiceNow offering for requesting infrastructure. I haven't really dug into it that much, but they recently added the ability, though, for native support for generating Terraform projects in Proton. So you can request resources that ultimately get rolled out via Terraform. That's all I know. Anybody already been keeping an eye on this better than me? I'm curious, Andrew, I haven't seen you around for a while, but this sounds like something, Proton might be something interesting for your organization. Have you guys looked at it or ruled it out?
Right now we're focused on air gap. So we can bring Terraform in, which is something that we've looked at. I have not looked at Proton. I didn't know it existed until 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So you're running Terraform in air-gapped environments. That sounds like an interesting challenge.
We have auspicions to. We don't do that yet. We haven't found a good use case for it, but it's something we're able to do.
I feel like that's interesting. You know, what would maybe work for something like that? I'm just thinking out loud here. Does Artifactory support any sort of a pull-through registry for Terraform yet?
Yeah. For Terraform? Oh, no,
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I mean, Artifactory can just be a generic, you can have generic, packages. We're actually developing a tool called Zarf that that is a declarative packager for air gap deployments of things. So we can declare images, Git repos, any binary file, any text file, and bring them over. And the plan is to, right now we just do simple SHA summing for Providence, but the plan is to do full SBOM and signing of artifacts to the air gap.
And the signing part, that's cool. That makes it a little bit value add there. Cool. Let's see what next is on my list here. Just a small announcement. We have 2 new modules coming out. One we released yesterday, I believe, which was this one for service quotas. So if you're not aware, there's literally thousands of quotas available through the AWS Service Quota API that you can set. Unfortunately, the best way we found is really using the quota codes like this. We actually first went down the route of code generation, and we generated meaningful variable names for every quota. So you could literally just specify something like subnets _per _ VPC and then 250. But when we saw that would introduce literally thousands of variables, we walked that back and took the route that most other implementations have taken, which is just passing the quotas by code or name. Also, what's nice about our implementation is that if you specify a value of null, we will still in the outputs return the current value of the quota. So if you are in your tooling using outputs in any kind of way and want to know what your quotas are, either like, for example, in GitHub Actions, when if you look at the output of a run, and you want to see what your current quotas are, you'd be able to look at those in one place. The other module we're implementing, it's kind of related to it. It's our budget, AWS budgets. So this allows you to set and configure budgets. Let's see, is this merged yet? I think that the pull request for this, the implementation is still open for this here. So what this is going to enable you to do is configure any number of custom budgets and receive email notifications when those budgets are violated. We are tying all of these into another module that we call a component. It's our account settings component, and that's going to make our account settings component better at basically baselining an account with some of these fundamental things. Our fear is that we accidentally deploy something that causes the customer to incur like a massive cost in some account, like $20,000–$30,000 database or something, and we want to avoid that. All right. Oh, there's an announcement here that I should bring up, because we only rediscovered it. I know there's a bunch of you using Spacelift. We use Spacelift as well. One of the little Easter eggs there that we discovered is if you set this environment variable, you automatically get infra cost integration into your Spacelift run. So then you get this nice information about how your changes are going to affect the cost of your infrastructure. And I hear mostly good things about infra costs. So and the fact that you get this mostly for free sounds like a win-win.
Is that related to KubeCost? Like, is it the same company or anything, or is it just different products?
No, I think it's a separate company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Cube
different.
cost is different. Yeah.
I can add some content on this one actually. InfraCost is doing actually great job. They're gonna add like good features. One of their new features is that you can share the HTML. So you're gonna have like a private generated HTML link, and you can share that in your Slack or MS Teams with. Yeah, so that's nice to have. Yeah,
it'll be like a hosted summary of the cost in a HTML page. Gotcha, that you can access. That's interesting. And yeah, it is still free. They will eventually come out with some SASE solution, but not yet.
Yeah, still long way for them, but they are doing like good base of development. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I like KubeCost also. Both projects are good, yeah. But the KubeCost is not free, like open source, like InfraCost, I think, or I'm not sure.
It started with an open core at least, but I'll be honest, we started very early with KubeCost, but there was very low demand of our customers, so we haven't been supporting it lately.
Real quick question on InfraCost there. So I would imagine, is it just, can you target per region, or is it just a general idea as to what the cost is going to be?
It's looking at your specific plan file. So whatever region your plan was generated in is what what InfraCost will use.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And yeah, so InfraCost, for those who are new to the tool itself, is an open source GitHub project. And I believe there's a GitHub action workflow for it as well. So you can use that if you don't use these other tools. There's examples for using it with Atlantis, which I know many of you use. Jenkins, of course, GitHub Actions. So for the GitHub Action implementation, they have a GitHub Actions repo. Deprecation notice, please use our new and improved GitHub Action instead. This repo will be deprecated. So I guess that link was wrong. I followed. So InfraCost actions, this is where they're putting it. All right. Other announcements, kind of minor. If you are leveraging Systems Manager now, it has the ability to have outbound webhooks, which is nice for integrations to other systems you might have. Or if you're tying it in with your no-code framework like Zapier or automate.io, etc. Also, another similar announcement is via AWS Chatbot, Amazon Systems Manager now can execute runbooks on your behalf. So you can do remediations just directly via Slack. Terraform 1.1.4 was released. Pretty non-consequential update, unless I guess you were affected by these specific issues. Nothing that I could call out. Oops.
That count issue is actually a little annoying if you spend a little more time working on it.
Yeah, you had this one.
Yeah.
Was this when you went?
So what happens is, if you're writing a module and you're adding or removing count, on a resource, and in particular, so Terraform tries to account for that move in the state automatically from the 0 index to unindexed, or from unindexed to the 0 index.
Yeah.
When you're adding count of 0 or 1 kind of thing. And then they added the move statement, and in Terraform 1.1.3, I think they introduced a bug where all of a sudden it would just fail. Like I don't even think you could run a plan at all. So yeah, I ended up at one point having to downgrade to like 1.0.8 to get a clean refresh and apply, and then was able to update to 1.1.3. But they just released the fix today.
Well, that's good and forthcoming. One thing we are desperately waiting for, I wish there was an update on, is the defaults function. Just made me think of it. It's um, anybody have any insights on when this is going to make its way into the main line and not be treated as an experiment? Because right now it's not recommended to be used, but a lot of our modules have this problem because we use a lot of maps as inputs, as variables. Anybody using defaults consistently with their infrastructure today in production?
Also patiently waiting for it to become a regular.
Yeah, I think I saw
Or at the
some
very
comment from you on it.
yeah, at the very least, I'd like the optional marker in the variable
Yeah, at a
object
minimum,
block. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need the defaults function so much. Like that's a little bit of an optimization for me, but at least let me mark an attribute as optional.
Yeah. This is like a more heavy-handed alternative. Go on, sorry.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt. We at Skyward are using that for providing defaults for feature flags, for branch protections as we're managing our GitHub repositories through Terraform using GitHub Provider. And that's one of the cases where it has proved to be very useful because like we group our GitHub repos by prefixes that fit different teams. So we can better manage permissions to the teams and those scopes of the permissions, and like different groups of repositories want different Git flows on those repos. They're not same for mobile development. They're not same for front end. So we use defaults to kind of feed in some of that.
How many repos are you managing with the GitHub provider?
We're transitioning the migration, but I would dare to say we probably have about 50 to 60 now that are like completely managed with Terraform, and we still have quite a bit to go from Bitbucket.
Because just a heads up, a common thing that I hear when you're getting into the hundreds of repos is you're now hitting the GitHub rate limits, and I believe you can't get that raised on the personal access token. So heads up.
I think we kind of had a little bit of problems with that already. We initially used GitHub personal tokens in our pipelines as well.
Yeah.
In the Circle CI context, but I think we switched to, because GitHub provider supports several auth mechanisms for GitHub, and I think we switched to creating GitHub app that is not throttling those API requests as much.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's a good trick. All right. Next announcement is on our AWS Utils provider. This is just a public service announcement because I've seen a few people get bit by this, and it came up most recently in a Slack conversation here. So many of our modules, including our AWS Client VPN module, use a provider that we have developed called AWS Utils. So the reason for this is we need to do things that the AWS provider for Terraform doesn't natively support. So in this case, in our provider here, we wanted to export the client config, which is available in the API, but for some reason, Amazon or the Terraform provider doesn't expose that. So we added it to our AWS Utils provider to do that. The gotcha is modules that we have that use that provider also need to have a providers block for the region. And I thought I was going to be able to see it in the example here, and I don't see it in the example. So anyways, when you run into this issue, you're going to get this error, like a awkward error, like this resource doesn't exist yet. You just created it, and that's because the provider is going to be using some other region than your AWS provider is using. So in this case, you need to explicitly pass the region to the AWS utils provider as well as probably pin the versions as well to use one of our more recent versions in case you're not doing that.
Yeah, I've been there. I use AWS CLI to export, but nice to see the utils provider doing that. So yeah.
We got a lot of hidden gems in this utils provider. So you go to Cloud Posse Terraform provider, AWS utils, just a refresher of some of the things you can do with it. Oh, it's under the docs here. So we provide a number of data sources like this, but we also provide some resources like you can delete the default VPC in an account. This is a really weird resource because Terraform, usually the act of creating a resource doesn't destroy a resource. So that's why you will never see this resource available in the official provider API. But since this is our own, we can do funky stuff like that. We provide a specific IAM access key resource that will actually expire. We tried doing this. We did not want to create this resource, but we could not figure out any way of doing it in pure Terraform. So we had to create an expiring IAM access key resource. This is like for CI systems. Like if you want to create a hard-coded credential that some third-party CI system like Circle CI will use, that's why we have that. GitHub organization settings, security, hub control disablements, also not something that's possible with the AWS provider itself. All right. And last thing that caught my attention, I was just checking out Anton's newsletter. If you guys haven't yet subscribed, go to weekly.tf. Anton is a very active community member and has some interesting insights on that. So he pointed out this new GitHub action. I really dig it. It gives you very pretty plan outputs. We have been down this road at Cloud Posse multiple times, and it's a lot of effort to construct a rich comment like this for the output from a Terraform plan. It's very easy for it to get overwhelming. It also supports creating a separate section of showing what resources drifted based on your configuration, specifically that they say changes outside of Terraform could actually just be permadrift in your Terraform code too, though. Anyone else have any slick GitHub actions for Terraform like this one?
I wrote something similar, but mine's much uglier. So
Okay.
I'm gonna see what they've got over here.
Sounds good.
I remember seeing something similar. It was called something like Opta, OPTA. I'd have to look it up. But it was the same idea.
Yeah, maybe look that. I see this was a fork of this other one by Mercari. Mercari is that online marketplace like eBay kind of. Guess they created something similar like this. Supports Slack formatted notifications too, which is slick. So yeah, there's a lot of interest, of course, in getting improved workflows natively into GitHub Actions. So I expect cool things like this. The other cool organization I follow for a lot of these things is ReviewDog. I know Vlad is a regular contributor of their GitHub Actions.
I haven't had the time.
You haven't had the time anymore? Yeah.
Nope. Hopefully I'll get back to it sometime in the future, but right now I have other priorities. The actions still work as far as I know though, and you can help with them.
Exactly. They're open source, they're public. So yeah, these are the ones I was thinking of there, which is the TF-lint and the, which, yeah, Vlad was a contributor here, and TF-sec. Also, glad inspired. What I love about the review dog things is you get these very topically relevant comments on your code. All right. Now going back, that was all the announcements I had. Anybody else have any good announcements?
I wanted to end up having a conversation about what we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the channel, in the help file channel, about using the help file provider in Terraform.
Yep,
However,
yep.
I have a meeting in 5 minutes, and I don't think
no, we missed you again.
I don't think that, yeah, I don't think that conversation will go in just 4 minutes here. So
yeah, I did add well, this was the original thread that you kind of started the conversation. It's not exactly your question right now, but Jim, I'll keep that on the agenda and we'll talk about it next week. Hopefully you have a little bit more time and we can talk about it. We'll probably get to it in the second half of the hour.
Yeah, that'll be good. This meeting popped up today, so it wasn't one of those last minute gigs. I really want to have the conversation, though. I think it could be a really good conversation about what people think with respect to blending hardware and infrastructure. Excuse me, hardware is a bad word. Infrastructure deployments with software deployments, even if that software deployment is substrate to the cluster. So, and I'm using, and let me kind of clarify here too, of course, because it's home file, that implies that we're talking about using Terraform to deploy clusters. So obviously, if you're using Terraform to deploy virtual machines or instances within AWS or wherever, you know, you do you, boo boo. But from a cluster perspective, this is really specifically what I'm trying to address. I'd like to get other people in on that conversation. So.
All right. Yeah, I'd like to have that conversation. We have one customer using Helm file as well, together with Terraform, and for that use case, it's working out all right. But mostly, we're just going directly to the Helm provider. Anyways, I don't want to we'll kick that can down the road to next week.
Let's kick it a
bigger conversation. Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
All right, guys. I'm gonna go take off. Thank you very much.
Yeah, cool. Take care, man. All right, so I carried over a bunch of the questions we didn't get to last week. I got one from you, Oliver, for this week here. So this is probably an easy one to start with. So Oliver, you're asking, what is a good way to ensure that a Terraform plan on one branch does not block other branches from doing a Terraform plan? And this is where I got to stop and pause. Wait. I don't think you're asking what you're actually asking, because the whole reason we have the locks there is to prevent this from happening. You can always specify the option to Terraform to ignore locks, and then you don't have the problem. But the purpose is to have locks.
No, that's not. That's not what this is about. So what brought this about is that. So in our CICD, we have on feature branches, we have Terraform plan, and then on the master branch, we'll have the apply. And but at some point, for whatever reason, the Terraform plan command, I guess, crashed and didn't release the lock. Normally it releases the lock, but I guess there's some situations where it doesn't. So the question then is, okay, well, if the Terraform plan of a feature branch crashes and doesn't release the lock, then someone else who's doing work on a different branch, might push their code, and it's legitimate for them to do a Terraform plan because this other one failed, and so there's probably things to fix, right? So that other branch now is blocked. Like the user will see a failure, or the developer, and will go there and see, the lock is in use. So now they have to find out, well, okay, why is that? Who blah blah blah. So I was just wondering, is there a robust way to ensure that if the lock is not released, I couldn't find a robust way to find out if it's safe to use TF on the force unlock.
So it's just funny. I love it because it's just validating something that I've been saying for a long time. If you look up why we recommend Spacelift or any taco like Scalar, M0, Terraform Cloud, is that it is non-trivial to actually do CICD with Terraform, because like this one edge case with plan files, how do you clean those up? And this fact that you should actually be generating the plan files, for example, as part of the CI process, and then applying those as part of the CD process. And then, yeah, if there are any failed or crashes, the orphaned locks in the DynamoDB table need to be cleaned up. But then there's another situation here that you need to be in. Well, are you using the pattern of applying your plan files at deployment time, or are you just running re-terraform plan and apply?
Yeah, we haven't decided on that yet. It could go either way. Depends, I guess, what, you know.
Because one of the challenges is that if you're doing it with the plan files, which is, you know, in air quotes, like I guess the kind of perceived best practice way, because you have this artifact of what you want to do. And then you have two or more projects modifying the same area of state.
Yeah.
What happens after you merge? And then one affects the shape of the infrastructure such that the other plan file is now invalid. But you already merged that other PR, and it gets really messy.
Yeah, I mean, usually, you know, when it's normal, like non-infrastructure code, that's addressed by merging the branch into your branch before you do the final PR acceptance, right? So
yeah,
someone else somewhere has modified something in the meantime, so you have to get their changes in, and you'll have to update your plan. So it doesn't seem too bad on the surface, but yeah, I can imagine that there'd be more complicated cases where.
I think that if you are going down this route, I think your best bet is to implement a CLI that wraps Terraform and implements any of the locking you need, any of the cleanup you need, any of these processes, such that you can just run this on the command line and it works perfectly. And then you can run that same command in your CI process, and you'll be able to get around it. But just using like vanilla Terraform, you're not solving it.
Right.
I think part of the difficulty there also is when you're merging things into Git, it has a really great kind of conflict detection algorithms, right? So you have, if you're making changes to two different files, it's really no big deal at all. In Terraform, if you have everything in one big state, especially, like, it's kind of everything conflicts, you know? So the solution, I feel like you have to break things up into smaller states, and then you can start to kind of merge things in parallel and they don't conflict anymore.
But then you start using suddenly remote state, which we use a lot of, like remote Terraform. And then now you have these things called data sources whose state doesn't depend on what you have in Git. So the problems therefore cannot be solved with Git. And that's one really important thing to acknowledge here, that Terraform state is not 100% defined in your Git repository.
Right, that's a good point.
So, all right, next, anything to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Just an observation: when I listen to or participate in these conversations, I always just kind of try to think back to, you know, the way things used to be, and that we're still light years ahead of there. And this is challenging stuff, but it's still, you know, highly desirable.
Yep, still hasn't been solved yet. Or just higher order problems, I guess. All right, let's see what this, I forget what this question was from Jeremy. Jeremy, are you on the call today? Doesn't look like it. So let's see if. Yeah, we'll skip this one, see if you're on next week, Jeremy. So we get more context from you. Ryan Cartwright was asking this question. Now, in the interest of disclosure, Ryan is with Spacelift, so they're obviously a company that aims to solve these problems. But I think it is pretty interesting because it relates to the question we were just answering. It's like, you know, if you are using Terraform and using deploying infrastructure with automation and so forth, how are you solving all these specific kinds of problems? So like budgets out of hand, we could say that could arguably be addressed a little bit by infra cost and lack of security and compliance. This is the audit trails, the policy-based applies. How do you detect drift? That's, you have to basically, since Terraform state isn't entirely desired state isn't 100% defined in version control, you have to do continuous planning of your Terraform code. And how do you, do your basic integration testing for all of your Terraform modules, bringing them up and down. One of the most common problems that we encounter is with Terraform, right? You're constantly doing all these incremental state migrations and adding features, but you're seldom actually do a full teardown and reconstruction, at least in live environments. So sometimes you introduce cycles without even realizing it. Anyone have, just off the cuff, anything you'd like to add, address any of these things? How do you guys like improve your collaboration with Terraform?
I guess I would say one of the more interesting things that we end up doing a lot is using wrappers, like you had suggested earlier. It seems to be the safest way, and it also helps if you're in a situation where you have to run more than one tool. Like, say you have to do a Terraform run, then an Ansible run, and then 2 more Terraform runs, each of which is building another layer and other elaborate. It really helps to have wrappers that do that sort of thing that are configurable.
If you're not all on one version, that's something.
That's another big deal.
Yeah. And by the way, TF switch just looks at your config and changes the version. Very helpful.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know about it, it's worth like saying again, TF switch. Really.
It's one of the plethora of like there's TF-ver, TF-env, TF switch. There's what's the ASDF that I know you like a lot, Andrew Roth, I think. And
that's the general one, right? That's
the general one.
Yeah.
That
was one of the first things my new guy turned me on to, which was super encouraging.
I guess the other thing that I really find useful is having a single container that kind of contains all of the Easter eggs, all the tools that you use on a regular basis, and sometimes several different versions.
Geodesic, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, shameless plug there. That's what we do. We use this as our Docker-based image for everything we do.
But Eric, didn't you know everyone says containers should only have one thing in them?
I know, right?
All the time, and it still drives me crazy.
Drives me nuts. It's like being way too taking everything too literally.
Gitbot workspace or code space pre-set up or pre-configured to install everything that's needed to just start editing Terraform, start validating it, linting it, whatever, is super, super helpful.
I like that one. That was a really good suggestion. I think it was like at the end of last year in December, we went over that a little bit more, and it motivated me so much that I've created a task internally. And this year I want to deliver that as part of our standard implementation, that there's either a Git pod or a GitHub code spaces config file to make, which solves this troublesome collaboration, making it very much easier to collaborate by having a Git pod config or a GitHub code spaces config.
You can easily add both.
Oh yeah. The plan would be to be adding both. So
yeah, and I highly suggest adding both. Give people options, especially for open source things.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's the advantage of the Git pod piece?
First of all, before we go into the advantages or disadvantages, are you familiar with conceptually what Gitpod and GitHub code spaces, what they offer?
No.
Probably not as much as I should be.
So these are, it all started back in the day with, what was it, Cloud9 or something, one of these first remote IDEs, then Amazon bought them. GitHub came out later on with code spaces. Gitpod preceded GitHub code spaces. And it's a way to edit and collaborate on code just in the browser with a very rich experience. GitHub code spaces is actually based on like VS Code, right? And then Gitpod, I don't know what it is, but it's still a very powerful editor. Oh, it's also VS Code. Okay, cool. So you still get the VS Code experience, but it's in a browser and multiple people can collaborate, but you can define the base image, so to say, that it operates on, which could be any container. So now if you distribute your company's tools in a container and then run them through Gitpod or GitHub code spaces, everyone has a identical baseline for an IDE, and you'll reduce some of the, hey, it works on my machine, reduce the barrier to entry. Basically one click, you have a full IDE up and running for that environment.
Nice. Instead of putting your laptop in a container, you're putting your laptop in a container in the browser.
Got it.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good summary. So I dig it, especially one of the things that we find, like, we're all striving for implementing a DevOps-like culture where there's fewer barriers between development and operations and greater collaboration. But it ends up that you still have a lot of developers that don't have an interest to and won't be coming up to full speed on some of the stuff we do for DevOps. But if you have a very simple environment that they can get up and running, they are programmers after all, and they can very easily, make some changes and test it. What is so intimidating is getting the environment up and running and being able to very easily authenticate, for example, with AWS, and having your Terraform and all the supporting tools checked out in an appropriate way. And like, for example, if you depend on TF switch, having that automatically set up and working for you. In our case, having Atmos and geodesic and all that.
Yeah. Do you also produce like your own configurations, like custom configurations for code spaces? And
yep. Yeah. Let's see here. So Vlad has some good. Was it 6 A's?
It's linked in the Zoom chat if you want. I have
okay.
one Terraform module that is unmaintained, but it's public. That's not me. There are 7 A's.
Oh, yeah, 7, I got it wrong. Okay. So Vlad has an example here of the config file, and it just looks something like this. Here you can see he's specifying his base image, and that could be any base image. It could be a base image your company has produced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm just installing the pre-commit hooks here, but you can do way fancier things like download and install modules, do some checkings, start some local things, start your app, start debugging, but that's more for code. For Terraform, it's super helpful to have a pre-build. Gitpod already supports pre-builds, so doing all the tasks before you start the environment, so it's faster. And if you are working on like a really big infrastructure with, I don't know, a couple hundred modules is a lot, but with 30 modules, downloading them takes a while and it's kind of annoying. So you could optimize that for even faster and a better experience. I like it.
Yep.
I like the idea of maybe using it as a trigger for, running more complicated operations. Like sometimes all you need is a hook to be able to run a wrapper. Mm-hmm. And if you have a standardized way of doing that, like through, just a simple automation hook in, like Gitpod or something like that, that might be a really great way to simplify the process of helping people run, like a nightly stack build, for example, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also makes it very easy for you to run interactive commands with opening up the terminal inside of the container. So it's a truly complete remote development environment. All right. Let's see
This is a
here.
concept we've been looking at for air gap, and it's got a lot of traction because that's a hard problem too when you're in JWix or whatever and you're trying to do classified software development. It sucks.
Yeah, I could see how this would simplify that if only a solution existed that you could do it in a fully air gapped kind of way. The problem with all this open source stuff is it imports the internet's kitchen sink of NPM modules. All right. Next up, we have another question by Oliver. I don't think we got to this last week, right, Oliver?
Let me see. What's the question?
Does anyone have used Ansible enough to shed some light on, what types of things you would definitely use Ansible for versus Terraform? Context, cloud, not on-prem.
Right. Yeah, I had to leave early last week, so I didn't know whether that was.
I don't think we covered it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, like it's easy to find, broad statements about, Ansible is about configuration management and Terraform is about states and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I find those not that helpful because, if I'm trying to figure out, okay, what situations, will Ansible be better? Because a lot of tasks you can do in both, right? But which one is actually better, right? What concrete examples can you give me where if I try to do the same thing in Terraform, it'll be more work or more, less robust or whatever.
Yeah.
And, beyond the obvious stuff, okay, so if I have to set up an EC2 instance, probably Ansible makes sense. But beyond that, is that the only thing that people end up using Ansible for anymore? Maybe,
Yeah, for example,
I don't know.
Yeah, for example, should you provision all your apps with Ansible on your Kubernetes cluster, even though you're using Terraform to provision the cluster or something? And I guess a little bit comes down to if the company is already an Ansible shop and has very strong prowess as it relates to the tool. But if not, then I would probably start moving on and looking towards what the ecosystem is gravitating towards. And I don't see Ansible picking, well, okay, in my echo chamber, I don't see Ansible, Chef, Puppet picking up steam.
Yeah, I saw an interesting video. I can't remember the guy's name there. Where one of the guys who makes quite a few DevOps videos on YouTube, but maybe Vlad something. He's quite funny, and he was going on about how basically, Ansible, Puppet, and Chef, they're all dead.
I wonder if is it our very own Vlad on here? Sounds like something
I don't
know.
Say.
Red Hat wants a word with you back behind the woodshed. My answer was going to be, if you're working with Red Hat, you're probably using Ansible a lot.
Yeah.
I can firmly say that Vlad is not me.
Okay.
No, I still see Ansible, Chef, Puppet used for AMI building.
Okay, fair.
With Packer. It works great. And I'm not only seeing that in things like immutable infrastructure, but I'm increasingly seeing that in the Kubernetes world where, hey, we want to build our custom AMI based on the AWS official AMI, for example, but we also want to pre-cache this really chunky 10 gigs images on the nodes because they're really annoying and they absolutely destroy our node provisioning time and things like that. So they're still used, but only for node provisioning. That is too complex to be done in user data. And that's it. I don't think people should be using EC2s anymore. That's too strong of a sentence. I think Fargate is well on its way to outshine and deprecate EC2s. So the need for tools like Ansible, Puppet, and Chef should be minimized.
Interesting.
I goes on to say, I don't think that if you're not using Ansible today and you wanted to build AMIs, you don't have to start introducing it. But if you have a large competency around building EC2 images and have Ansible already, sure. I mean, it's probably just a slightly more elegant way of doing it together with Packer or some of these other tools, but not necessary to learn otherwise.
Right. Cool. Thanks.
All right.
Kind of a related question or comment
Go for it,
about
Mark.
Ansible. In general, have people seen that there's some, like if you have a large legacy code base that's Ansible, have people had difficulty or found interesting solutions in how to run that, for instance, or marry it with, AWS SSM, things like that, where you're translating your Ansible module into documents in SSM, things like that?
Your question makes sense to me. Anyone running Ansible via SSM?
I'm happy to be one of the very few people with that problem, I guess.
Well, what I like about that is it kind of marries some of the IAM capabilities that you get running with SSM with the provisioning aspects of Ansible.
Yeah. It does turn out that it's relatively easy to run, SSH over SSM, but you lose some of the multiplexing capabilities. So Ansible tends to run a little bit slower, but that part at least has worked out relatively well. When it comes to using the AWS SSM scheduler, though, to get tasks done, I find that it's often quite slow and sometimes doesn't do a great job of returning messages from the hosts that you run against.
Last use case I've seen Ansible being used is also for setting up for provisioning local workstations for developer environments. Now, I still kind of like the idea of using more containers for that, but I have seen people using Ansible for setting up workstations. All right, next, Nigel, are you on the call today? I know we didn't get to your question last week, and this has been an ongoing issue for you. All right, so no follow-up with Nigel. All right, let's turn around and see any questions in the Zoom chat here. Lauren Gordon, you were asking, is InfraCost one of Anton's projects? I'm not sure. Was InfraCost started by Anton? I know he did a foray into figuring out cost on his own at one point, but I don't know if that was the basis for or in any ways related to InfraCost.
It's not looking like it.
Okay.
Andrew posted he had a Terraform cost estimation and there was another tool actually called TerraCost also. So I was kind of getting them swapped in my mind.
Yeah, I vaguely recall that. Okay, makes sense. And let's see in the office hours chat if there were any specific questions posted there. Is it really a common practice to run Terraform plan continuously to detect drifts? I don't see it that often. Well, let me just answering your question, Andre. I would say it's really, from my perspective, it's really seldom that we see anybody do Terraform in a robust manner at all through continuous delivery. So I would say, yes, it's very seldom to see anybody running Terraform continuously to detect drifts, because even if they were, how would they even report on it? How would they even act on it? But this is why I'm so bullish on these more modern continuous delivery providers like Spacelift or Scalar or whatnot that offer these options. Now, I don't know what the features are of all the platforms, but Spacelift definitely does provide this. And why it's so nice is that it reproposes a plan when it detects that there was a change. We have customers that have over 1,000 stacks deployed under Spacelift. And if we were using a conventional CICD tool, it would be impossible to manage all the drift that naturally happens. We see drift for so many reasons. We see drift because data sources changed. We see drift because the AWS provider changed. We see drift because somebody had clicked off some changes. We see drift because the way the module was implemented was not idempotent. We see drift, fortunately, not because of getting hacked yet, but anything could happen. And I love this from this perspective that we have a peace of mind knowing that what was last supplied is still the current state.
Yeah, there is also a tool called driftctl that maybe for small use cases gonna be very helpful. It's called driftctl. I guess they've been acquired by Snipe. Yes. Snipe
They did. I didn't realize they acquired them. Interesting.
Yeah.
Sneak. I believe the canonical pronunciation is sneak. Has been bothering me forever, but we have the official. Yeah.
I know. I feel you. Yeah. This tool, I guess, for you, maybe for small startups or teams, gonna be very helpful. I use it actually most of the time instead of running like periodically Terraform plans. It's very helpful actually. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like what's interesting about Sneak. Another way of thinking about it is like test coverage. It runs and it actually tries to figure out of what's deployed in Amazon. What can it find in your Terraform state files? And it tells you kind of like if anything is unmanaged. I love it in principle. Everything I've seen it in practice is that it's not ready yet. Just way too much noise. But maybe after the acquisition, more money and resources have been thrown at the project. It's just an engineering challenge. And Andy posted a link here to the proper. So now you know. Oh, I had no idea that's what it stood for. And it's pronounced sneak. All right.
Sneak, yeah. Sneak.
All right. Thanks for that canonical pronunciation documentation reference, Andrew. All right. So moving on then. All right, any other questions we can get to? We're actually at the end of the hour here, so any quick questions we can get to before we wrap things up, another session of office hours? All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate all the interesting conversations and information that was shared. If you haven't yet already subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/cloudposse and subscribe. We appreciate it a great deal. If you haven't yet added me on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with everyone on there. Go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. I like to stay in touch with what everyone's working on. If you can't catch up with all of our office hours, we do syndicate them as a podcast. So you can go to podcast.cloudposse.com, subscribe to it in iTunes, Spotify, or however you listen to podcasts. We also have an invitation to office hours. If you want to add it to your calendar, just head over to cloudposse.com/office hours and you'll get an invite to that. Well, see you all next week, same place, same time, and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.